Father, we thank you for your great love and mercies towards us. We just catch glimpses, but those glimpses are powerful. Help us, Lord, to sense more who you really are. Bless us now as we focus on the mission of Jesus and the steps that were taken so that he could atone for us, justify us, and redeem us. Bless us now as you speak to us. May we hear your voice clearly. May something happen within us to help us to understand that you really are talking to us. We pray now for your guidance and your protection in Jesus' precious name. Amen. All right, we introduced the reason for the 7 steps we're going to go through last time. You recall that when God made man, he made him to be the image of God. And as we went through, we saw he lost that image. He lost all connection with the Father, the Son. And he set himself adrift, lost, hopelessly lost, cannot be fixed. I hope you remember that. Man cannot be fixed. God has to make a new creation. Okay. Now, the devil began to catch some of that when he saw what man looked like. Man looks like the Word. He looks like God. Why did he do that? And it made the devil quite nervous to see a being that looked like God. And then God did something that we're not going to talk about that really upset Satan. He made a memorial of his creatorship to show something that God does, Jesus, that Satan can never do. Satan cannot create. And that settled it right there. Oh, why did you do that? Now everybody knows he's the creator. And so he hated the man. And he hated the Sabbath. And it's been that way ever since. And so he has created, he has made a great confusion over the Sabbath. We know that. But he's also made a great confusion over what is man. And through those two things, he has made the confusion in people's minds about who God is. And that's where we're going through this series. 7 things that Jesus did in his mission that help us to understand the plan of salvation. And if we miss any one of them, we're going to get confused too. Now, we know all the words. That's not a problem. We've got to get it into our heart because we're missing something. God is not taking theologians to heaven. He's not going to take people who are experts of doctrine. He's not going to take people there who can quote all the verses. Jesus said, suffer the little children. He would pick them up. He would sit them on his lap. The children loved him. Here were the Pharisees. Here were these other people trying to kill him. And the children loved him. Why did they love him? Do they love grumpy old men? Jesus is not a grump. Children are not attracted to those kinds of people. Do you think Jesus never smiled? There are people who actually believe Jesus never smiled. Children don't go to people that don't smile.
Right. He smiled in his whole face.
Jesus smiled. Now, he was never joking. He was never hilarious. He was never any of that. He was not a comedian. Life and death all the time. But he smiled out of an inner joy, and those children picked it up. And he said, suffer the little children to come. Who was telling them not to come? Yeah, his disciples. The church was telling him, come on, they're getting in the way, they're noisy. No. He said, wait a minute, suffer the little children to come, because the kingdom is made of such as these. Now that was totally contrary to the teachings of the church. They missed the whole thing. Jesus was trying to show them the real kingdom. It's right there in those little children. Now, they needed a Savior like everybody else, but they had something. They could trust all the way. They didn't trust 50%. Children don't trust 50%. You either have it or you don't with them. They trusted Jesus. No questions. They could look at him and say, this one we can trust. And they trusted. And when they played, they played. And Jesus says, this is what heaven is like. This is who's going to go and be there. Now, the reason I'm going through this first is, what are we looking at when we see Jesus doing this? Are we looking at a grumpy God? We're looking at God. This is who God is saying this. And this is who the man is saying this. Because he knows about children. We'll get into that a little bit more as we go in here. Today, we're going to look at the first crisis, as G. Campbell Morgan says it. The first crisis in the plan of salvation. The first miracle that God is doing in the plan of salvation. And we're going to look at 7 of them. There are 7. Interesting number, isn't it? And then we're going to see the new life, the number 8. That's interesting too, because that's the number 8 in the Bible. New life. The number 8, by the way, is the number of Jesus. In the Greek, his name is 888. The perfect number 8. I'm not going to go through that right now. Numbers are important. You ought to study those someday. There are Bible messages in Numbers. All right. What is the first great mystery that opens up to us? What does the word mystery mean in the Bible? It does not mean a detective story. The word mysterion in the Greek means something that is to be revealed. So it's only a mystery to the people who don't have it revealed to them. We want to see the mystery. We're going to have it revealed to us by God himself. There are people who sit in the pews with us who don't understand the first mystery we're going to talk about, and I can prove that. We want to understand. We want to know the plan of salvation the way God says it. He reveals the mystery to those who have been initiated. Okay? Do you know the Masonic handshake? Yes. They haven't shown it to you, have they? That's because you're not a Mason. Only the ones who've been initiated and say, we'll be loyal to this, then they show them the handshake. Do you know that God showed the handshake to Ellen White? It really shook up one of the Masons. He was way up there, and she didn't even know she was doing it. She gave him the sign, and he went, oh, oh. And she said, what? Where did you learn that? Learn what? God wants to show us the mystery. If you don't know it, you're going to know it today. The most sublime mystery in all eternity. We're going to talk about the birth of Jesus. Now, you think you know the subject. Maybe you do. This is not going to hurt you if you do know it. I hope you have never tried to analyze it, because it can't be analyzed. That's what's driving some people crazy. They're trying to figure it out with their brains. Can't do it. This is too big. This is too out there for any human to get a hold of with just their mind. So we're not going to try to analyze it. That's impossible. It's beyond our complete understanding. But I want to say this as we begin. We are going to talk about a fact. Okay? A fact that's declared to us by God in His Word. And we accept that fact, not because we can analyze it or because we understand everything about it. We accept it because God said it. We accept it by faith in Him. Now, you'll notice I didn't say by faith, because that's a trap. You know what people have faith in? Their brain. Yeah, people everywhere say, I have faith. But you start pressing them. And their faith is in what they can understand. They don't have faith in the things they don't understand, but God said them. So I tell you today, you have faith in what God said, not what you understand. All right. Deuteronomy 29:29. It says, the secret things belong unto God. Now, we all know that. There are big, big things God has never told us about. Those things belong to Him. But the things He has revealed belong to us and our children. So, there are two things. There are secret things. Leave those alone. Don't speculate. Don't try to know things He's never talked about. We've gone over a couple things here that He said leave alone. And yet people have become experts in some of those things. So I don't know how they get that way, but God says, you leave my secret things alone. I have revealed some things. Now, He has revealed to us some things about the birth of Christ. Those are the things we want to look at. He has revealed some things. So we're going to look at the birth. And please don't fall into the trap that so many people fall into. As soon as you start talking about Jesus being born, the only thing they think about is humanity. That is the first trap. Don't do it. Don't concentrate on His humanity. You'll end up in the wrong place. What should we be thinking about when we think about the birth of Christ on this earth? What is it that's happening? God, infinite God, the Word, is coming to the earth, and He's going to take a form we can understand. It's God that we need to be thinking about. It's the Word who is coming. There's no gospel without the Word becoming flesh. If we just think about the flesh, It's all God. And that's why the people who do that are in such big trouble, and they don't know it. God became incarnate. You know that word, incarnation? That's the important word. That word does not say humanity. That word says God incarnate. God. So we're going to look at the person. God in human form. Matthew chapter 1. Verse 20. Oh, this isn't working again. Here we go. While he thought on these things, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a dream, saying, Joseph, thou son of David, fear not to take unto thee Mary thy wife, for that which is conceived in her is of the Holy Ghost. And she shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. Now all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son. They shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. Not a man only. Not a human for you to focus on his humanity. God with us. That's the Word of God. That's the very first chapter of the New Testament. How can people miss that? God with us. What a thought! How can God be with us? We're talking about infinity. We're talking about an unknown majesty, sovereign, omnipotent, omniscient, God with us. How did he do that? We don't know. We don't know, and we probably never will know. How does God do something like that? The person of God comes to earth, and now we can see him. Yeah. Remember, that's God you're looking at. It's just not a man. It's God. Now, in this first chapter, and in Luke in particular, Luke, the first chapter, there's something said there we will focus on a little bit. In Luke 1:35, it calls Jesus the Son of God. Okay? The Son of God. In chapter 2, verse 7, it says, her Son. Now, is that a contradiction? No, there are no contradictions in the Bible. There's only our inability to see the whole thing and put it together. There are no contradictions. The Son of God, her Son. That's one person. Both of those make one person, because there are two, aren't there? There are two natures. Jesus, who is known as the Son of God in all eternity. Yes, he's always been that way. That's a hard one to get a hold of. That doesn't mean he was born. That doesn't mean he came after the Father. It means their positions, the way they show themselves to the universe. Jesus is equal with the Father. Doesn't it say that in Philippians 2? So we're not talking about two different kinds of God. There's only one kind of God. Son of God is Jesus from all eternity. What's he called in all eternity? The Word. The Word. The self-expression of God. The Word. Now, when you want to communicate with somebody, you have to talk to them somehow, don't you? You either write or you say something, you speak. But your word is your expression. Jesus is the self-expression of God. The Word. So what we have happening here is the great miracle of God, the unseen becoming the seen, the unknowable becoming the knowable. And we have something happening here that nobody ever dreamed about before. God doing that. Nobody ever thought about that before. So when Jesus comes and He takes flesh, it just should be an overwhelming thought to you, because that's what it is. How is it possible that God could do that? Let me back up for a moment. Let's look at John 1. You can quote this from memory, but I want you to see something with me here. John 1, in the beginning was the Word. Now, what's it mean here in the beginning? Does God have a beginning? No, that's not what it's saying. It says, as far as you're concerned, you finite being, as far back as you want to go, what you call beginning, He's already there. Okay? So, in the beginning, if that's how far back you want to go, was the Word, and the Word was God. Okay? We're talking about God. The Word was God. Now, I want to slip down to verse 14. Hold that thought. The Word was God. And the Word was made flesh. Are you able to get that? The Word was God. And the Word was made flesh. What is that? I said, well, I always knew that. Do you know it today? Does that mean anything to you? The Word was God. And now there He is in the flesh. We're dealing with something here we have been too cavalier about. We say, oh, I knew that. Come on. You don't know anything. I don't know anything. None of us know what this means. We're just saying words. But we want to try to get at it because God does say some things we can't understand, and we need to look at those. The Word was made flesh. Now listen carefully. Full of grace and truth. Now, what kind of a human is that? I've talked to lots of people that don't believe this verse. Do you know that? Seventh-day Adventists who do not believe the Bible. Because they have their own pet theories that somebody gave them. They didn't think about it. Somebody gave it to them. It came in a tape. It came in a DVD. It came over their TV. It didn't come out of the Bible. The Word was God. The Word was made flesh, full of grace and truth. That's it. I don't care what you hear that's different. It's wrong. This is the truth.
Amen.
This is the only verse in the Bible you need to know on that subject. And if you know this verse, oh, the Bible's a wonderful thing, you know, if we read it, if we understand it, if we let God talk to us and show us, instead of listening to what men come up with in their speculations. You know, there are 300 churches out there, and the reason there are 300 different churches is they're not reading the Bible. They're all making up their own. We don't want to join that. We don't want to join that. So now, here is a man that unless you are spiritual, that's all you see is a man. But the ones who have it revealed to them, they know that's God in the form of a man. It's a real human, and it's real God. It's one person. One person, mysteriously blended. Infinite. Unmeasurable. But he's come close to man now. And man has been lifted up in the process. God took the form of a man. Now you hold on to this one. The Bible said, full of grace and truth. That means he's sinless. Don't you ever go out there and say he had a pull to sin. He had a bent to sin. He had a propensity to sin. Those are all lies. And you have to believe whenever I hear somebody saying them, that's what I tell them. Those are lies. They're not the Word of God. Jesus was holy, pure, sinless, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners. You want to say blasphemy? Say something different. Philippians chapter 2. You know verses 3 to 5. Let's read verse 6 and following. Who being Jesus, who being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. He was the same as the Father, but made himself of no reputation and took upon him the form of a servant and was made in the likeness of man. Now there's a lot in just that much. It goes on and says some more, but right now we just want to notice something. The form, that Greek word for form in this chapter is morphe. And morphe means likeness, and that's in the verse too. Now, the word morphe in the Bible never means the same as. Okay? It never means the same as. Likeness. All right. So he came, the eternal God came in the form of a servant. And number 3 that we want to pull out of this, well, we didn't read enough here. Being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Jesus, the Word, God from all eternity, becomes flesh. He's still God. He becomes flesh. And in that way, he has limited himself. God has put restraints on what he will be able to do now. That's something else we don't understand. How does he say, I won't exercise my powers as God now? But he comes in the flesh to do what men can do, and only what men can do for themselves. He will not do something for himself that you can't do and I can't do. So if we look at the life of Jesus, everything that relates to protecting himself, we can do all of it. All he didn't do to protect himself, we can't do that either. That was a little harder to think about. Did Jesus ever get irritated with somebody and say, oh, you make me mad? Never happened. You know what he was telling us? Yeah, you got it. It shouldn't be happening in your life either. It doesn't happen in Christians. A holy temper is accessible to every believing, repenting child of God. We'll get to that later as we move through this series. He changed his form. Did you get that? The form of God now becomes the form of man. It doesn't say God became a man. It doesn't say that. It says he exchanged forms. Now, we don't know what the form of God was before. We're not told that. It's nowhere in the Bible. It's nowhere in the Spirit of Prophecy, obviously. So we don't know about that. But whatever it was, he exchanged it for another form. Still God, but in another form. The form of man. He took humanity upon himself. He didn't become a human. He took humanity on himself. And when people looked at him, what did they think they were looking at? Just a man. Yes. And people are still doing that. They're trying to make... I'm not going to go into that. All right. In all points, he was God. In all points, he was man. Fully man, fully God, one person, Jesus Christ. A blending. And you know, it's driven hard-thinking theologians almost to the brink, studying the Bible and trying to figure out, where does the one leave off and the other ones start. Yeah. They call it the communication of the natures. Well, they can call it anything they want. The Bible says it was one person. Two natures in union. There's the big word, in union. I want to read you something that I did many, many years ago. I forgot I even had it. I found it the other day, and I said, this will fit right here in what we're doing. The term Son of God. In the book of Matthew, it's used 9 times. You don't have to write these down. Just get the gist of it. 9 times. In the book of Mark, 4 times. In the book of Luke, 6 times. In the book of John, 11 times. Now, that doesn't mean anything to you yet, but let's look at how they're used. In Matthew, Jesus never uses that title of himself. Never. In the book of Luke, it's never used by Jesus. In the book of Mark, it's never used by Jesus. In the book of John, Jesus is using it. Why? Because the book of John reveals Jesus as God divine. It's the only book that does that. Okay? So it makes sense in the book of John. So in the book of John, he's using the title. So who is using this term in the book of Matthew if it's not Jesus? 6 times men are using the term, and 3 times the devils. Do the devils know something some of us don't know? They called him the Son of God. They didn't say he was just a human. The devils know Jesus is the Son of God. In the book of Mark, 2 times men call him the Son of God, and 2 times the devils say it. In the book of Luke, an angel calls Jesus God, Son of God, 1 time. A man does it 1 time, and 4 times it's the devils. The devils are saying it more than anybody else, that Jesus is God. He's the Son of God. Well, now, let's look at the Son of Man just briefly. 32 times Son of Man in the book of Matthew. 15 times in Luke, 12 times in John. Who do you think uses the term in Matthew? 32 times. Jesus, every time. Jesus, every time. In Mark, it's always Jesus. In Luke, 26 times, Jesus. Matthew, 10 times it's Jesus. And there's 3 left over. But those 3, you don't know what's going on. It might be John in his commentary saying, what did I say, 3 or 2? I'm not watching my numbers. 2 times? John, 10 times. What happened here? Oh, I didn't put John here. John 12 times. It's 2 times. 2 times. Okay, sorry. All right, the point is, that there's only one person using the term Son of Man in all the Gospels. It's Jesus. It's how He designates Himself. The devils and other people call Him God, but He says Son of Man. That's His favorite way of referring to Himself. Now there's another term. There is a term using the word Son, all by itself. There's the Son of God, there's the Son of Man, and then there's Son. What is Son? Son is the person of God and man together. And in all eternity, there's only one of those. Only Jesus is God and man mysteriously blended into one person. What would you call something that there's only one of in all eternity? Unique, that's the word. Now, none of what we are learning so far from the Bible lends itself to some of the speculations that some people are putting out. Jesus is unique. That means one of a kind. Nobody or nothing can be the same as that. Unique. Don't ever get mixed up. God is not going to be very happy with you getting mixed up when you've got so much Bible to look at. That's right. Over there in the 2nd chapter of Hebrews, how shall we be saved if we neglect so great a salvation? Well, not studying for yourself, that's neglect. All right, let's leave that alone for right now. The incarnation is the first step of the 7, where Jesus begins the process of our salvation. The incarnation prepares for the atonement. There can be no atonement without this first step, the birth of Jesus. Okay, let's go to Colossians. The first chapter. Verse 21. And you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath He reconciled in the body of His flesh. In the body of His flesh, through death, to present you holy, unblameable, and unreprovable in His sight. There can be no atonement without the body of the flesh. And it is a thought so radical, Satan never thought about it. He didn't know God could do that. The body of the flesh, through death, God would go that far. Through death. Come on, God can't die. He found a way. Through the body of flesh. You're saying who is in His sight? Unreprovable in His sight? Let me ask you a question here. You see, there's something very difficult. We have been taught to think about the Father as God, as Jesus as the Son, and the Holy Spirit as somebody different. I'm not going to get into the third one. I just want to talk about the two. Who is Jehovah in the Old Testament? Do you know that? Who was it that spoke to Abraham? Who was it that spoke to Moses? Who wrote the law with his own finger? You see, the churches of today want to make a different God in the Old Testament than the New Testament. That's impossible. Jesus is Jehovah. He is God. Okay? So don't, when you say God, mean somebody other than Jesus. Don't do that. Jesus is the only God we have ever known on this earth. He came to reveal the Father. Know who He is, but we only get to know that through Jesus. Jesus was with the Jews. He set up their religion. He was with Adam. It's been Jesus the whole way through. It's about time we realize Jesus is my God. Don't say He's the way to get to God. He's God. We need to know that we're worshiping Him. Yes, we worship the Father too. That's what He came to do, to show us the Father. But don't try to worship without worshiping Jesus. In His sight, God. Yeah. See how that works? Yes. That's a good question. All right. Let's continue on here. I'm going to try to finish today. I never get finished with anything. So, when the Father gave us something, what did He give us? Think it through carefully with what we've been through. What did He give us? He gave us a perfect man. Don't let anybody talk you out of that one either. Jesus was a perfect human being. There was no bent towards anything wrong in Him. Don't do that. He was a perfect human being who hated sin with a perfect hatred. And that's where He has us aimed. He wants us to learn that. And when we become like little children, we'll get it. The fact that we don't get it means we're not like the little children He described yet. There's one of my proofs I told you about. All we have to do is follow the words of Jesus and believe them, and all of a sudden things begin making sense. How would you like to be like a little child right now and stop being an adult and say, I trust you, Jesus, I believe anything you say? Yeah, sure. You see, we're not believing. We say, oh, I'm one of the good guys. I come to these meetings. No, that doesn't make you one of the good guys. Character development is one of the reasons we are still here. Have you wondered why, after you became a Christian, why God just didn't take you and say, hey, let's quit this mess? Come on, you're a Christian now. Let's go home. And He didn't do it. You say, well, I'm still here. Why? Well, one reason, of course, so that we can develop a character like Jesus. We didn't get one when we were born again. We just started school. But the other reason is the most important one. You died to sin. You died to self. You died to self-indulgence. And you became the sacrifice of God to work the same way Jesus did. As I sent you, as the Father sent me, I send you. Why am I still here? To do what Jesus did. Win souls for the kingdom. That's the only reason I'm still here. He said, yeah, we could take you when you're born again, but then who would do the work? I'm not going to ask angels to do it. Jesus is in heaven. Who's going to do it? Yeah. Everybody sitting here. That's why we are here. Everything else is second. And when we believe it and we start doing it, we will be as the little children that Jesus talked about. Of such is the kingdom of heaven. They believe what I tell them, and they go on and do it. What did he say? We think the command he gave us was the Ten Commandments. That wasn't it. He gave that to Moses. He gave us a command when we were born again. He said, go. That's the command. He didn't say wait for him to come to you. He said, go and teach everybody who will listen. Go and reveal who I am, and I will bring the Father to them. Go! You're my shock troops in this world. You don't belong here anymore. But I'm putting you here for a purpose. To touch all the ones who don't know yet. God gave a perfect man. I need to give you a Spirit of Prophecy quote for that. I've run into so many people that refuse to believe that one, I've started collecting the quotes to say it. 3 SM 132. God did for us the very best thing He could do when He sent from heaven a sinless being to manifest to the world of sin what those who are saved must be in character. Pure, holy, undefiled, having Christ formed within, He sent His ideal in His Son. Did He send somebody like me? I'm sorry, He didn't do that. He sent His ideal. Now, God's ideals are pretty high, don't you think? Desire of Ages 3:11, God's ideal for His children is higher than the highest human thought. Be ye perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Go read that page. That's word for word what it says there. He bade men build characters in harmony with this ideal. I better not change the ideal that God sent. I have to leave it just the way He did it. He was like Adam was before he felt spiritually connected to the Father and the Son. Yeah. 1 SM 256. Well, now you've got me going here. How much time do I have here? We should have no misgivings in regard to the perfect sinlessness of the human nature of Christ. You better write that one down and have it ready the next time somebody tells you something different. They claim to believe in the spirit of prophecy. I'm sorry, they don't. That's 1 SM 256. I hesitate to read the next sentence, but I'm going to anyhow. Our faith must be an intelligent faith. Okay. None of this listening to tapes and believing what they say. It says an intelligent faith. Looking unto Jesus in perfect confidence, in full and entire faith in the atoning sacrifice. This is essential that the soul may not be enshrouded in darkness. That's an interesting sentence, too. All right, continuing. God gave a perfect man. Now, last time we said the reason people get into such big trouble is they invent their own God. And the churches are doing it, too. They project their brain and what they think God is out into immensity. And the further out it gets and the bigger it gets, the worse it gets. A monster God. Because it's like the person who invented him. Evil. But when you take the perfect man, the ideal of God, and you project him out into eternity, he just gets more holy and pure. And we have something to aim at now. We see who God is. And so the Bible tells us that the Father could not get this across to mankind right away. When man fell, he was ruined. So how does God tell him any of this? Well, we see from history it took God centuries and centuries and centuries to get people ready to understand a little bit. And through the centuries he used symbols. Through all that time he used systems until finally the revealer came, Jesus. And what does the Bible say? Instead of calling him the ideal, the Bible calls Jesus something. In the book of Hebrews it says, he is the express image. The express image of God. That means an exact copy. Just like God. Now we can say it. Now we can say it. Jesus, the express image of the Father. In Jesus, the Spirit was enthroned. The Spirit was dominant. Yes, he was in the likeness of fallen flesh, but that doesn't mean anything when you have the Spirit there. He was unselfish. Unselfish. Selfless. And I'll give you the word now that everybody uses but don't see that it means unselfish. The word is love. Agape. Not love for me, love for everybody else. Love for the others. Soul winner. Missionary. Can't be at peace while the world is perishing all around me. Can't look at a lost sinner and say it's okay if you go to... No. It's not okay. Somebody has to do something. It's me. Love. Jesus came to show God himself. He didn't come just to show us a human. He came to show us God himself. But he had to take that form so we could see it. You look at his words, any words he said, any words, any of his deeds, just pick one or two here or there, and you're going to see you're not dealing with just a man, and you're not dealing with just God. You're dealing with something different, both of them together. Come unto me, all ye that are heavy laden. Yes, you're full of labor. I will give you rest. Yeah. Now, as you listen to those words, Jesus understood what a yoke was. He understood it. He was a man. He understood what a burden was. He felt it. He had it come to him as an experience, a burden. He knew what it was to be heavy laden. And he knew what the word rest meant. So we can hear his humanity talking to us out of a sure consciousness of what he's saying. But as we see he's a person, we can hear God saying those same words to us. And now through Jesus, he knows. He knows that consciousness of God is coming through saying, I know your burdens. I know you're heavy. I will give you rest. God talking. Jesus doesn't talk like just a human. Take any of his words. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection. What man ever said that? Take any of his words. What about his deeds? Pick any deeds. One day he walked in with a little cord in his hand. And the church was inside getting rich out of extortion. They had the money all stacked up on their tables. They had the pigeons over there. They had the sheep over here. They were making money off of the religion. And Jesus walked in with a little card. Now, I want to ask you, do you think you could go to Las Vegas right now today and walk in with all that money everywhere with a little whip and get the result that he got? What do you think they'd do with you if you walked into a place like that with your little whip? Yeah, you get the picture. It's quite clear. Well, if those people had seen a peasant from Nazareth walk in with a whip, they'd have done the same thing. Why didn't they do it? They looked into his eyes and they saw something they'd never seen in another human being. They saw God looking back. And he wasn't happy. And they left quickly. There are people in our midst saying, he left his divinity in heaven. Come on. Those people in that place didn't think so. They knew what they were looking at. Pick any of his deeds, any of his words, and you'll come up with the same thing. The person of God-man, Jesus Christ, the one and only one of a kind. Unique, monogenes is what it says in the Greek. That's what the Greek calls it. In the Greek, 5 times it says of Jesus, he's the only one of a kind. How can people say something different? The only one of a kind. Why was he like that? He came to show us God's purpose for a human. That's what he came to show us. What a real human looks like. And how did he get to be that way? It came from just one thing. Complete, total submission to love. And when you're completely submitted to love, you'll live like Jesus. That's the only thing that can happen. Because when you're submitted to love, love says, I'm going to take your will, your ugly, sinful will, your flesh self, and I am going to sanctify it and make it something we can use in holiness, and I'm going to give it back to you now so we can go together. That's why we're not getting it. The church all over the world is not getting it. Because who wants to surrender? That's dangerous. God might tell me to go someplace and work for Him. Do you know I had a dentist tell me that very thing? He told me he could not surrender to God. He was an elder in the church. And I said, what do you mean you can't surrender to God? He said, He's going to send me to Africa as a missionary. And I looked at it, I could hardly keep a straight face. I said, this man is bearing his soul to me. I cannot laugh at him. But I asked him a question. How do you know God's going to send you to Africa? He said, well, I just know. And I looked at him and I said, well, even if he did, so what? You're going to miss heaven because you don't want to go to Africa? On a speculation? No, when we submit to love, there's only one thing that can happen. Love takes over. And it comes out love. We have not been thinking about these things correctly. Somebody has to wake us up. And the Holy Spirit has a hard time breaking through by that little voice that comes. It's a little teeny voice. It gets all drowned out by all the other things we're listening to. Israel had not understood their own scriptures. They crucified Jesus when He came. When Jesus came, it was time. The government of Rome, the culture of Greece, the highest culture of the world, and the religion of God, the Hebrews. When Jesus came, those three elements were at the top of the heap. Rome, Greece, Israel. And Jesus came because the world was at its peak. He came. And there was no welcome. No welcome. His own church was totally indifferent. Knew nothing was going on. The angels came to them all excited. Oh, church, it's time. And the elders are playing games. They don't know anything about the Bible. And so what did God do? A star to heathen. Out of the darkness, God made a star for non-church people to look at. And there were some honest non-church people out there who said, what's that? I heard about that. Jacob, a star, something, what is that? Oh yeah, Daniel. When he was alive, he said something about that. Let's go look in the records. Yeah, this is over in Persia. The Zoroastrians. Astrologers. Astrology? Yeah, astrologers. They believed in that weird stuff. But they wanted to know what that star was. And it moved. And they said, let's see where it's going. And of course, as they were following it, their minds were working and said, yeah, Messiah, that's what David said. Messiah, 490 years, 70th week. What is that? And they put it together, and the Jews didn't. And the churches of today still don't understand Daniel, the 9th chapter. They're going to miss it too. Unless we tell them something. The star, an outside nation. And then there were some angels. One came to Zacharias, one came to Mary, to Joseph. A whole bunch of them came. They had to sing to somebody. They found 2 shepherds out there. And the shepherds were thinking, isn't it about time for the Messiah to make a showing? They knew more than the church. And the angel said, here's somebody. Let's sing to them. Now, what did those shepherds know? You know more on your little finger than they knew. But they were waiting for Jesus. And all that sky opened up, and it was wall-to-wall angels singing. Have you ever heard anything like that? They heard it. They saw it, and they said, oh, we're going to die. No, the angels were singing, peace, shalom, shalom to men, goodwill to men on earth. Goodwill from God. That means something. Goodwill. And then there were prophecies. All the Old Testament prophecies were being fulfilled. And now here were some new ones. Here were some new prophecies. Anna, Simeon. Yeah, new prophecies were happening right there. You can find all these things. Why did the Father do that? Well, if Rome, Greece, and Israel weren't getting it, he was going to call attention to it himself, so no one could ignore it. And there was Herod. Those magi came to him and said, well, where is he? Where is he? Where's who? So when we saw his star, they said, well, when did you see that star? Oh, we've been traveling a couple of years. You've been moving a couple of years. Yeah. And we're here. Where is he? Well, you keep following the star. When you find him, come back here, tell me so I can go see him too. And of course, he didn't want to see him. He wanted to kill him. And we know that because he went to where he thought things were happening and he killed all the babies who were 2 years old and under just to cover himself for that period of time that they saw the star. He got the message. The Messiah has come. But it wasn't the church that told him. It was those heathen from Persia. And the people in town were getting a little bit excited too. Who are these shepherds? What do they mean? Singing. Light, angels. What are they talking about? They stirred it up too. And Herod, of course, saw the gifts.